We join one another today on the land and near the rivers, originally in the care and protection of the Adena and Hopewell nations and the Monongahela peoples, and shared over time by many Indigenous nations, including the Delaware, Iroquois, and Shawnee tribes, as a place of gathering and exchange. We join you also on the land and near the rivers, cared for and cultivated as a site of freedom, from the Underground Railroad to global uprisings for racial justice. As a process of rematriation, we acknowledge our connection to place and honor the land as a relative.
Good morning. I'm Elon Dancy, and I bring you greetings from the Center for Urban Education in the School of Education here at the University of Pittsburgh. We are excited to welcome you to today's School of Education Symposium on Practices of Freedom. The Center for Urban Education mission and vision is to transform education structures through research, teaching, and service that advance principles of collectivism, liberatory education, and equity and justice. The Center for Urban Education is currently engaged in Ready to Learn, a critical pedagogy math program, and the Retired Black Teachers Project, among other collaborative projects. Signature initiatives include the Heinz Fellows, a school community partnership in social education, social justice education, and the Summer Educator Forum, with the most recent forum focusing on forging futures through Black education histories. The Center for Urban Education is home to Negro Educational Review, one of only 2 U.S. education research journals devoted to the study of people of African descent, and home to Educational Researcher, an American Education Research Association journal. You may also know us through our monthly Lunch and Learns or reading groups that seeks to deepen our knowledge about education, equity, and justice. This continues, in a way, the work of the QCEF conference, where we heard from brilliant historians of Black education about possibilities for education transformation. Those rich conversations covered several areas of Black self-determination and struggle, and as you might imagine, talks about the current attack on critical race theory. You might recall that on the eve of losing the presidency, Donald Trump issued an executive order in September banning quote unquote diversity in race sensitivity training in government agencies, including all government quote unquote spending related to any training on critical race theory. Bills have been introduced across states and across institutions, with schools being the subject of many of these. For instance, Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida banned CRT from being covered in public schools for quote unquote teaching kids to hate their country and to hate each other. But also how CRT functions today primarily as a catch-all for critical pedagogy, which suggests racial inequities are anything but fair outcomes, is clear across the country today. And so beyond the current CRT attacks, we know that US schools need transformation when we pay attention to the everyday practices of schools, the hierarchies, the rank and file, the testing, the curriculum. The CRT attack is just one rupture within school systems where maintaining and reproducing inequities are endemic. So we are thrilled to be co-primary investigators with Dr. Sabina Vaught, who you heard from, who is the Teaching and Learning and Leading Department Chair, but then also our Dean, Dr. Valerie Kinloch, who leads our School of Education. Our co-primary investigation on the grant represents our understanding that critical pedagogy grounded in Black and Indigenous knowledge traditions is what is needed to transform school systems and teacher preparation more specifically. Thanks for being with us today. Welcome. And again, apologies for the technical difficulties at the beginning.
Thank you, Dr. Dancy. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sabina Vaught, and I am going to just give you a brief sense of what we're doing today, and then we will hear from our School of Education Dean, Dr. Valerie Kinloch. So our sessions today are organized and facilitated in the practice of freedom. That is, these are spaces to share, to learn collaboratively, and to generate questions. Rather than walking away with what get called best practices, we hope you'll walk away with radical ideas, meaningful new connections with people, and questions that will continue to shape and enrich your pedagogy. We have opportunities for you to think about freedom approaches to building syllabi, refining pedagogy, and learning about the grant project. All of this we're doing in the spirit and practice of freedom. Our purpose is to think deliberately and vigorously outside the confines of what we often understand schooling to require or to be. Cedric Robinson wrote, "The social cauldron of Black radicalism is Western society. Western society, however, has been its location and its objective condition, but not its inspiration. It is certain that the evolving tradition of Black radicalism owes its peculiar moment to the historical interdiction of African life by European agents. This experience, though, was merely the condition for Black radicalism, but not the foundation for its nature or character." So today we ask you to think about Black educational praxis of freedom as perhaps sometimes located in the cauldron of state compulsory schooling, perhaps owing its peculiar moment to the historical interdiction of Black life by supremacist state departments, laws, and institutions of schooling, but not drawing its inspiration from them. So our attention today will be to the practices of freedom that draw their inspiration from self-determined Black living. From the long life of Black intellectualism, arts, culture, and metaphysical knowledge, Robinson points to as the genealogy of the Black radical tradition, we invite everyone today to learn, to wonder, to ask questions, and to interact in the spirit of freedom. This is a spirit of open-ended inquiry and struggle that are at the heart of collective knowledge. So we invite you, as Cornel West says, to be courageous, to bear witness, and to see what the end is going to be. We're excited to learn with and alongside you today, and so thank you for being with us. And first, we will hear a message from the Dean of the University of Pittsburgh School of Education, Dr. Valerie Kinloch.
Valerie Kinloch, the Renee and Richard Goldman Dean of the School of Education at the University of Pittsburgh. And it brings me great joy to be with you for a few minutes to share ideas about our new project, Practices of Freedom, a model for transformative teaching and teacher education, which is an initiative funded by the McElhatton Foundation in partnership with our School of Education and our Center for Urban Education. Along with my colleagues, Dr. Sabina Vaught and Dr. Elon Dancy, I serve as one of the co-PIs on this amazing and exciting new initiative. Before I share what this initiative is, I want to ground this project and the work that we do in our School of Education in our mission vision statement. So bear with me as I share it with you. The mission vision of our School of Education is as follows. We ignite learning. We strive for well-being for all. We commit to student, family, and community success. We commit to educational equity. We advocate. We work for justice. We cultivate relationships. We forge engaged partnerships. We collaborate. We learn with and from communities. We innovate and agitate. We pursue and produce knowledge. We research. We disrupt and transform in equitable educational structures. We approach learning as intertwined with health, wellness, and human development. We address how national, global, social, and technological change impacts learning. We shape practice and policy. We teach with and for dignity. We think, we dream. We lead with integrity. We are the School of Education at the University of Pittsburgh. It is that bold mission vision statement that I just shared with you that guides every single thing that we do as a community of learners and thinkers and leaders, activists, advocates, professors, staff, students, and alumni connected to this School of Education at the University of Pittsburgh. And in fact, it is that mission vision statement that allows us to question meanings of freedom. as we pursue meanings of freedom and liberation for all. Hence, we have this project, Practices of Freedom, a model for transformative teaching and teacher education. And I am excited that McElhatton Foundation selected our School of Education to lead this initiative. So briefly, I want to share with you some ideas that guide this project. I also want to share with you some of my own thoughts about where we could go and what we could do as a community of learners and thinkers committed to freedom and liberation. And so our school is really excited to have this partnership. It's a multi-pronged approach that prioritizes and elevates, as well as amplifies, Black educational traditions. Today, we are here gathered to think about meanings of Black intellectual and educational traditions, as those very traditions impact teaching and teacher education within local communities, within regional communities, statewide, and hence also across the nation and the world. In order to do this work, Elon Dancy, Sabina Vaught, and I have come together to think about revolutionizing teacher and teacher education. We are partnering with pre-service teacher education students, in-service teacher educators, community organizations and community educators, retired Black teachers and educators, but also with students and families and school district leadership. And collectively, our hope is that we will not only ignite learning differently, but we will have a structured approach that allows for partnership and collaboration, that allows us to think deeply and purposefully about how do we think differently about teaching? What does it mean to have a culturally relevant approach to how we teach and learn with other people? What is the value of critical race theory and critical pedagogies in this work? How do we understand and define freedom as a practice that leads to liberation? And how do we do these things within micro collectives that allow us to question our pedagogical engagements, our curricular practices, and our approaches to learning, to teaching, and to leading? I also want to share briefly that in response to McElhatton Foundation's call for proposals, which indicated a desire to work toward increasing the number of educators of color in this particular region, we came together to propose a very ambitious and multi-pronged approach that prioritizes Black community, cultural, and educational knowledge traditions. And so as we take this approach, this is what our hope is. Our hope is that we will not simply incorporate people within a system of schooling that we know has oftentimes produced more harm and trauma for people, but what we seek to do is to engage in a collaborative, collective approach that transforms the overall process and practices of schooling and the experiences that people have inside of schools, but also inside of community spaces. Hence, we center Black pedagogies, Black knowledge traditions, in order to not just increase the number of pre and in-service teachers and teacher educators working in schools, but to also think more broadly about deeper meanings of learning within community contexts right here in Pittsburgh and across Western Pennsylvania. This is our goal. We seek to recenter learning and hence education in order to create a model that is grounded in Black educational knowledge traditions that lead to a radical reimagination of what it means to teach and what the fundamental purposes of teacher education should be in this nation and in this world. So as we seek to radically imagine and reimagine this work, we propose 5 broad ways of doing this. And I want to hopefully remember these 5 broad ways and share them with you really briefly. So one is that we will house this project in the School of Education and work directly with our Center for Urban Education, with my office, and also with our departments, particularly the Department of Teaching, Learning, and Leading. We also seek to, number 2, have core faculty members across a range of disciplines involved in this project who can actually who could participate in thinking differently about teaching, learning, and teacher education. Number 3, and equally important here, is that we seek to engage partners in building a rigorous intellectual form of teaching and learning, an intellectual form that is rigorous and that is guided by culturally relevant practices. Number 4 is that we are going to work closely with community partners and organizations in order to work at this deeply sustainable and scalable model that would impact how we enter into schools and communities, focused explicitly on teaching and teacher education. And I would say number 5 is that we seek to establish practices and humanizing systems that would upend historical, ongoing exclusion of Black people, Black educators within teaching and teacher education. We need to do better. And over time, we hope that we will have more Black educators inside of our schools, working with our students, but also leading our schools and also working in community spaces. This work is not new. We have been doing this work across a number of years within a variety of spaces right here in the city of Pittsburgh and in the state of Pennsylvania. However, what this grant helps us to think differently about is how do we ensure that this work is sustainable and scalable? How do we ensure that this work happens in a school of education that has as its mission and vision to ignite learning, to disrupt inequitable educational practices, to work at forging engaged partnerships, and to do these things through an equitable, anti-racist, humanizing lens that understands the value of human interactions, but also teaching, learning, and leading. And so all of this to say, I am excited about this project. I am excited that you are here, interested in these sessions that we are having today. And it is my hope that understanding why we are steeping this initiative in Black pedagogical traditions and cultural practices and intellectual practices as well would help us to revolutionize and radicalize teaching and teacher education for the very people who need us to do this work the most. And that would be our kids, young people, families, and communities across this city, this region, and this state. So on behalf of our School of Education and in collaboration with Dr. Sabina Vaught and Dr. Elon Dancy, I am Valerie Kinloch, your Dean of the School of Education. And I am also concerned about the welfare of all of our kids and our communities, ensuring that this work gets done for those who need us the most. So on that note, welcome. Thank you for being here. And if there are any questions, please feel free to contact me. Again, on behalf of the School of Education, thank you for being here and welcome to Practices of Freedom.
Okay, good morning. Thank you all so much for your patience as I worked out the technical difficulties on getting the sound to you. Just a few notes to wrap up as we get ready to head into the excitement of the morning. First and foremost, deep thanks and gratitude to the McElhatton Foundation for providing the opportunity for us to do this work with you all in collaboration with communities and schools. I have dropped the link in the chat in case you found your way to us this morning, but have not registered, and I'm going to put that in there again. Just in case. We still have room for you to come on in. After we wrap up this welcome, the next concurrent sessions start at 10:30. Our own Dr. Sabina Vaught. No, I'm seeing you shake your head now. Maybe not. Okay. Well, Dr. Dancy and I will certainly be in a session to do Q&A for
10:50.
10:50. I'm sorry.
So people have a break,
yes.
A chance to register if they need to.
Yes.
And we will come back together at 10:50. 10:50.
Yes, I'm very excited, as you can see. And those of you who know me know I am excited and excitable. I'm ready to get this party started. So yes, take a break, take care of yourself, fuel yourself back up, because the morning and the afternoon is full of all kinds of amazing information. So again, we'll see you at 10:50. Dr. Sabina Vaught will be doing a Freedom Seminar Pedagogy Workshop, which is part of the curricular model of the Practices of Freedom. And then Dr. Dancy and I will be in another concurrent session to do an open Q&A about what it means to be deeply involved in one of those 4 generations. Anything else anybody needs before I go on mute and close out this session? All right, well, thank you again. Good morning, everybody. We're going to have an amazing time. Be well and see you all soon.